Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Beyond Second Cognition. I'm Beall. The topic of this discussion is the lure of the magical and mystical. I'm going to put some things in context. Hopefully, some of you will gain some insight in reference to this as to what drives this whole mystical agenda. And by the mystical and magical, I also include the belief in the supernatural powers of gods and angels and aliens, or whatever yanks people's crank that leaves them subservient to the idea of some kind of higher force above humans that makes them want to be more than what they are. What has occurred with humanity with the intervention of off-world gods, and I use the term gods loosely, you all know that. I use it because it's a familiar term, but I don't by any stretch of the imagination consider them gods in the sense that people think of God. It was just a term. But because of that, we as a species have always played second fiddle to some authoritarian god or another. With the hive intruding into the aspect as the single source, the oneness of creation, and that we all have this divine spark within us, which was nothing but the hive cell, that we had this enchantment capability to gain magical powers by finding communion with the One. Now, I don't care if you're pursuing occult powers, right-hand path, left-hand path, whether you're bending your knees in some church or down on your knees on a prayer rug with Islam or any of the other mystical traditions. The Hindu traditions are rife with the stuff. Theosophy has worked to blend all of these together through the perennial philosophy. And this is all going to be linked together comprehensively in the Gutting Mysticism book. But because of this dependence on authority on one hand, and the seeming magical powers of these off-planet people, some who knew how to manipulate energy that looked like magic, and others who did have technologies that also looked like magic to our ignorant slave ancestors. Humans have this fascination with the supernatural, the mystical, and the magical. Much of the pursuit in regard to this stuff comes from a point of dissatisfaction in the human mindset, where we're, sinners and all come short of the glory of God. Some people don't buy that Christian mindset anymore, and with the advent of moving spirituality from the East into the West through the tool of theosophy and into the New Age, everybody now thinks that they can become a god. And this all comes from a psychological sense of dissatisfaction with being human. It's not good enough to be human. We have to be magical humans. And this also drives this superhero agenda too. Because superpowers with the superheroes, the Marvel Avengers or the DC Legends or whatever, all it is just another form of putting on magical powers and making people desire to be more than what they are. They think somehow in their twisted ego imaginations that if they had superpowers, they could be heroes and save the world. And I got a lot to say about this hero mentality too, maybe before this video is done. But the thing is, because we were a slave race and we're now slave to the habits of multiple generations of mystical enchantment and ideological religious doctrines and things like that, people are hooked on the mystical quest. Anything they can get their hands on that they think that is going to give them superpowers or magical abilities or give them a mystical experience, they're going to pay money to do. And the think tanks at the Theosophical Society, they will crank out ideas until people lose interest in them and see through them as fallacy, and then they'll crank out a new idea. One of the latest, I guess, is that they're moving from the Galactic Federation of Light, which people got tired of their bogus prophecies, and the Syrian High Council and all this other stuff, to where people are now invoking the names of 50 ancient gods or invoking the names of 50 angels, thinking this is going to give them the fix where none of the other shit has. And this is going to fail too. There's nothing magical to that. It's just wishful thinking. And it sells a doctrine that people are still foolish enough to buy, you know, because they have to have that mystical fix. Supernaturalism is like a drug. I mean, once you get the bug for it, you've got to find the fix. You know, and I've been down this road. I got hooked into that shit, just like all of you did, you know, to lead you to this point. You know, and then you probably beat your head against the mystical brick wall trying to get where you wanted to be, and you know, it just never happened. So you pitch that, and you've got an inner knowing there's something there. And you know, if you've gained the wisdom to get over the mystical fascination and the magical fascination and the desire for superpowers and all that nonsense, then you wind up here. But it's this fascination based on the desire for, you know, being able to show off to your friends, I can cast a magic spell, or, you know, do some kind of parlor trick, or Reiki, which is another type of hive parlor trick all in its own right. I mean, it's a form of magic, if you want to call it that. And look at how people glommed onto that stuff. And we've done videos on Reiki and what it actually did and didn't do. But this desire to find this supernatural power, this magical ability, is so ingrained in our psyche, and it rises from a point of a human being being dissatisfied with being a human being. They want to be an ultra being or a Superman or whatever, you know, their imagination feeds them to. And humanity has been on this quest for thousands of years. Now, I did the video, the 2 definitions of ego. And I explained that in order to attach to the hive, to find the divine spark within, you had to override your waking thinking ego, which is not what we advocate. We're talking about removing the fake ego of the hive. But when someone was foolish enough to set aside their waking ego, if they could accomplish that, then the hive cell was able to move forward and manipulate your form through infusions of divine love, and then you could be lied to by the hive collective, and you would buy any doctrine they peddled, you know, because you had this love jolt and it felt supernatural and you felt you were talking to God. And then they come back and start these religions and tell these stories, and other people want some of it too. The fact of the matter is, none of it ever went anywhere. They were lures to get people caught up in a belief that at the end of the day didn't make shit. The only thing that ever passed into the afterlife was the fraudulent hive virus cell, and that's it. No living human being or their personality ever transcended anywhere, as I explained in the Greatest Fear video. My hope is sooner or later we can reach enough people that they'll get off of this opiate called spirituality. Because if you stop and think about it, that's all it is. It's nothing but a salve. It's a soother for the soul. And, you know, it sells to first cognition because it makes people believe they're going to get the free ticket to the afterlife, or they're going to gain some type of magical, mystical powers in this life if they can learn the right spells or make contact with the right beings. And it's a very rigid mindset. Probably 2/3 to 3/4 of this planet is wrapped up in this supernatural drug fest. And I mean, it is. Look at how they are with supernaturalism. It's just like a drug addiction, you know, like a cell phone addiction. So people keep hammering at it, even though there's been more than enough information put out that, you know, it's not what it says it is, folks, and you're just wasting your time. You know, I spent over 20 years chasing that rainbow, and, you know, I finally got out of it and said, well, this ain't right, so what is? We had to discover what is on our own, because there's nothing here going to lead you to that kind of the truth that we're teaching people about PSOYCA. All it was to lead you into the hive trap to make you think you had magical abilities. and you might get a little smattering of something, but in the long run, you were still an asshole human being driven by ego. So I'm putting this video out, hopefully to draw a few people that are wrapped up in the magical, mystical lure to sit down long enough to listen to this video and find out what you're chasing after doesn't exist. It is an ego fantasy. It makes you feel good, makes you feel like you're working towards something. You can learn the dialogue, you can memorize the script, but at the end of the day, there's no ascension, there's no place to go, there's no afterlife. So if you want to waste your life chasing the mystical and the magical and let the lure you on, then you're just pissing away your life, and you're not going to find anything about what you're looking for. No ancient wisdom or anything of that nature. So, we hope you find the channel. We hope you had gumption enough to listen to the end of this video. But the lure of the magical and mystical, it's a lure to a con game. And as much as I hate to be the harbinger of bad news, folks, if you want to keep playing that mystical song and dance, then, you're not going anywhere. You'll be spending your money and spinning your wheels, but you're not going to reach any type of destination of anything promised by the hogwash they call spirituality. It's all an illusion. And I can speak for that firsthand because I chased that illusion a long time. And it's a lot nicer living with pragmatic reality and understanding PSOYCA consciousness rather than the false consciousness of the hive and the lies the hive collective told humanity. So now we just have to break ourselves of the lies and break ourselves of the enchantment of the supernatural. For those of you doing the work, stay the course. Don't give up on yourselves.